Hey, welcome to Your Liberation Library, where we dive into media that addresses issues in faith, freedom, and heritage. I'm one of your hosts, Ishmael Wade, and I have here hosting with me Carl McRoy, also known as Pastor Mac.
All right, let's get into it.
Welcome to Your
Reforging
Liberation
the
Library.
White Republic,
Dive
Race, Religion, and America.
And
today. Ishmael Wade is here with. We'd like to welcome you to our Your Liberation Library. We just want to thank you for joining us today. My name is Ishmael Wade, and I'm here with Carl McRoy, also known as Pastor Mac. And our special guest today is Omar Miranda, counselor and freelance writer. And we'll be discussing the book Church Forsaken, Practicing Presence in Neglected Neighborhoods. Thank you for joining us today, Omar.
It's my pleasure, Ishmael. This book, this was a powerful, powerful read. I read this book in one sitting. I could not put it down. That's
how many pages is that?
It's 200 plus.
Man, you had a real comfortable chair.
Yeah, 222 pages. Yeah, I blew through it. And then I read it again.
Wow. Well, so tell us that title, Church Forsaken. What is this book mainly about? Because it's written by a pastor, correct?
It is. It's written by a pastor. And not only does he have the distinction of being a pastor, but he actually has the distinction of writing about the neighborhood that he presently lives in and that he grew up in. So he's got not just the perspective of a pastor and not just of a perspective of a pastor who lives there, but the perspective of a pastor who grew up there. And initially he talks about how he wanted to he just wanted to leave. But then when he got married and had kids, he realized that he was just looking for his roots and he wanted to come back to his neighborhood. But he realized that as a pastor, it wasn't enough for his church to be in the community, to be located in the community. The church had to be part of the actual community. It had to reach out and become part of that community. And not just with things like, health clinics and all those things that churches typically do. They'll put on a street fair when they're trying to raise money for the church. But just things like that don't benefit the church one bit. Later on in the book, he talks about starting an actual, like a grocery store / cafe, that the church actually bought a building and runs this place for the community because it was powerful because they were in a food desert. And so they needed to have a place that sold, fresh fruits and vegetables, and they didn't find one. So they became the change that they were looking for. So it's a really powerful book where he actually takes Jeremiah 29 verses 4 through 7 and 11 and really kind of breaks it down. And he covers each of these verses specifically in 2 chapters apiece. And that's what I love about it, is that he takes a couple of words and then turns it into a chapter and really just kind of lays out a plan. It's a powerful book. He really lays out the importance of a church becoming an indispensable, crucial part of a community. Just as important as a school or a doctor's office or something else. It's not just a physical building where people can come once a week to feel good about themselves, but the church becoming a Noah's Ark, so to speak, to really save people.
Yeah.
And so later on, he actually talks about, he realized that as a church, they weren't doing enough, even with what they were doing. And so they actually purchased a whole building and did something akin to what the authors of a prior book that I read, which was How Neighborhoods Make Us Sick. They actually started their own kind of comprehensive multi-systemic healthcare system where, and it's run by the church, which is powerful. So they took what Jesus said about the church, taking care of those in need, visiting the sick and the poor and the infirmed and people that were in prison, and giving them clothes and on their back and food in their bellies. And he realized that it just was insufficient what they were doing. They needed to do more. And he makes a really powerful statement. He said, if a church closes and it doesn't affect the community in any appreciable way, then the church isn't doing what it's supposed to do.
And I like the saying that kind of shows what the book is all about. He says there's no such thing as a God-forsaken community. There's no such thing as God-forsaken neighborhoods. He said there is just church-forsaken neighborhoods.
Right. And that's what he realizes. He says that Jeremiah 29 teaches the reader that the church really needs to be the solution to all the issues and the problems they're seeing. It isn't just, well, somebody else needs to deal with it. Well, DFACS needs to, child welfare needs to come and social workers need to come. He says the church, it's the church's job to take care of the community and to reach out and to minister to and to love on and to become part of that community. Because he said words are cheap.
Every morning before our feet hit the floor, we must put on our bifocals so that we are able to see the glory of God and brokenness of humanity in every situation. When we see in this way, we are freed to dream, even when things around us are not perfect.
Exactly.
I love that. So
you got to learn this.
What are some of the dreams that he talks about in the book?
He talks about seeing people the way Jesus does, not just seeing people as an amalgam of issues and problems, but seeing the positive things that they can bring, and how they can help. What I like most about the book is that he really empowers people in his community who are church members or not church members. He loves on them equally, and he empowers people to connect with other people, to just to treat other people with kindness and love and respect. And he tells people all the time, you don't have to be a member of my church for me to treat you with respect, because he says that it's very disingenuous, like what you were saying before, both of y'all, Ishmael and Pastor C, is that when a church reaches out to a community a couple times a year, not consistently, and they say, hey, if you come to this thing, we'll give you this coupon for this free book, or, you come school time, here's some free backpacks with some, well, that's great. But what about September and October and November and December, and January and February? It's not just, a one or two or three time a year thing.
Yeah. And
people, excuse me for being earthy when I say this, but people's bull meter is very attuned to that, and they don't want anything to do with someone like that. I wouldn't want to be friends with somebody who's trying to use me for something I got.
Wow.
I want someone who's going to love me just because I'm me, and who's going to see, value in me and not see me as a project. He early in the book, he actually told a story about, he was preaching one day, and a gang fight kind of broke out and overbled into his sanctuary. So in the midst of preaching, get the picture now, in the midst of preaching, these people just come busting into the sanctuary,
Wow.
Cussing each other and threatening each other. And he had to jump down off the pulpit and help to break up the fight. And he realized that, what, they weren't doing enough. Yes, they had youth ministry programs at their church, but they were not doing any proactive youth outreach. And so he took it upon himself. Now, mind you, like, he was taking his life in his hands. He took it upon himself to go stand on the corner and start hanging out with, with regular members who were what he felt like were either gang members or were candidates for gang members. Yeah. And the gang initially did not like that so much. They took offense. They felt like he was encroaching upon their territory. But after they realized that he was just there and wasn't asking anything of them other than just trying to love on them, trying to be a mentor, trying to be a coach, they opened up to him, and he was able to save several several young men from the gang.
Wow. Wow, that's awesome. Praise God. And I've been to West, and he's from West Inglewood, Chicago. And I've actually been there, and it's a different world. It's a different world. It's a different world. So as we are about to close, could you just give us some things based on the book, what you've seen in this, and Pastor Jay's, or Pastor Brooks' experience and what he's sharing? What do you feel are some steps that churches and Christians can take in order to be more present in their communities?
He says that over and over again, it's really important for each member of the church to ask, what would Jesus do? You know, a couple of years ago, they had those little wristbands, you know, those little silicone wristbands with the WWJD.
Yeah, we've all
He said,
seen
if
that.
you ask yourself that powerful question and really realize, okay, you know what? If I'm walking up and down this road, I'm in my community. I'm in the community where the church is at. What would Jesus do? I'm in my own community. What would Jesus do? What issues do I see where I may be broke? You know, I may have just enough money to take care of my family, but can I reach out to somebody? Can I knock on someone's door? So he's a big believer in individual action and advocating for the weak and the oppressed and doing it for people who can't do for themselves, because he recognizes that if you empower somebody and give them a sense of not self-importance, that's the wrong word, but give them a sense of value.
Right.
I'm not talking about secular self-esteem, like you're all that in a bag of chips. I'm talking about Jesus loves you, Jesus died for you, and because of that, you can, move forward and you can make some changes. And then he says, if each member is able to do that, then get them plugged into a relationship with that person. Then after you begin to meet that need with them, then ask them, hey, how else can I meet your need? And he said he's never once, he said in the book, he's never once invited people to church. He said people invite themselves to church.
Wow.
When they see that he loves and cares and the church really meets the community's needs.
Well, that's a good place to close it off. A pastor that doesn't invite people to church because the people invite themselves to church.
Wow.
Thank you so much, Omar.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Ishmael, and we'll see you next time on Liberation Library.